Hello again. I am Caner. I am with you with another video. Guys, in 2025, aviation industry globally is on track to achieve a historical milestone that has never been achieved before. Yes, in 2025, we are expecting 5.2 billion passengers traffic all around the world. That being said, for the first time ever in the world, the aviation industry will be surpassing $1 trillion globally. That represents 1% of the global economy in the world. Yeah, it's an awesome 2025 expectation. It's already 4 months past in 2025, but is it always good? Despite the record-breaking revenue estimation, the airlines are still operating very narrow profit estimation. I'll give you an example. We are talking about $1 trillion market. In 2025, airlines are expected to create 36.6 billion net profit globally. It's roughly 3 to 4% profit margin we are talking about. It is extremely narrow. When you compare the aviation industry with the Magnificent Seven, you can see that how good the technological companies are doing versus the airlines are trying to operate in a very small margin. Compared to 2024, airlines are expected to create more profit in 2025. In 2024, approximately all airlines in the world created a net profit of $31.5 billion. Right now in 2025, this number is expected to be $36.6 billion, up from 2024 numbers. When you take all numbers into account, you can see that an average profit from a passenger in 2025 is expected to be $7. You can see how tight the business is. If you lose $7 per person in 2025, the airlines will be losing money. And we all know that airlines now operating in a different environment because the airlines operating like a big banks, and most of the revenues that they're creating from is from the credit cards, and that's 100% truth. The tickets that they're selling standalone wouldn't be enough to turn the airline in a profitable side for various reasons. In 2025, we are also expecting lots of challenging factors for the airline industry. In this video, we will review everything one by one. Are you ready? Let's dive into the video. The first challenge that we are going to talk about is the cost of the airlines. Okay, revenue is increasing throughout the 2025, but the cost of the airlines are also significantly impacted, especially after post-COVID era, which is created by printing money. The inflationary aspects of the world economy is inflating the aviation industry as well. That pumps the prices up, the cost up of each airline in the world. Okay, we talk about the estimated revenues going up for various reasons, but at the same time, estimated cost of the airlines are going up as well. In 2025, the cost of the overall airline industry is expected to rise 4%, reaching $940 billion. So this is standalone is giving approximately $67.5 billion. We are talking about 6.7% of net operating margin, whereas 3.6% of the net profit here. As you can see, the costs are increasing, right? There are various factors on that. We can summarize the total increase in costs of the airline as follows. The first, labor cost; second, the maintenance cost; and the third, airport charges. I must say that still most of the work groups are still struggling to bring their salaries towards the pre-pandemic era if you deduct the inflation factor. Labor cost of the aviation is higher than the other sectors. Naturally, it is because of that the aviation industry need more skillful and highly educated personnel compared to other parts of the industries. That's why, historically speaking, the labor cost was always high in aviation sector. That's also a burden for the airline industries because in 2025 there will be more and more unions signing new contracts demanding rightfully their work groups rights after especially post-pandemic era inflationist environment. That being said, guys, now we are gonna move on the maintenance cost. We know that there's still a supply chain issues worldwide. Now, on top of that, we are talking about the trade wars taking place mostly between United States and China that affects global supply chain negatively. And also because of that, we know that aircraft manufacturers are also struggling to produce the number of the units that they promised or they expected to produce. So they cannot catch up with the new numbers, they cannot catch up with the promises that they have made, resulting the airlines to use their own existing fleets longer than that they planned. That creates more maintenance requirements on all aircraft. That is the other factors why maintenance costs are going up and up non-stop. Because when you have an old airplane, it takes longer and financially less viable to keep the airplane while you can get more efficient, less fuel burning, less maintenance required airplane. But airlines, they don't have anything to do at that particular stage with the increased demand. They're forcing themselves to use their old airplane or they're postponing to retire their old fleet. That naturally creates the more maintenance cost compared to what they planned in 5 years ago. In 2025, they will be still the case and the airlines will postpone retiring their old existing fleet because they cannot get more brand new airplane from the producers. We discussed about the inflation that has been created during COVID time. Unfortunately, the airport fees are no exception to that. Most airports in the world either are owned or operated by the government or any entity in the government. Anytime you purchase a ticket, you directly contribute to the government in a form of tax or fee. That being said, the government's expenses are getting so high nowadays, especially throughout 2024 and more in 2025, that unfortunately results for us to pay more fees or taxes for the tickets that we are purchasing. That's another reason the cost of the operation is going high, because the airlines are not taking this money for themselves, but in fact they pay this money to the related departments of the governments or the management companies, and then they pay it to the government. So that's another factor that driving the prices high. The last but not least, maybe the most important item when it comes to cost of an airline is the jet fuel price. In 2024, airlines were a little bit lucky. They enjoyed relatively low fuel prices. Unfortunately, jet fuel prices are really volatile nowadays, depending on the political and economical factors that we are in 2025. Airlines enjoyed very nice, relatively low fuel prices in 2024, and that contributed their profitability for 2024. A barrel of jet fuel in 2024 was $99 approximately, and the prices was expected to go down 87 even in 2025. But as of today, it was already $90. And now we are into 4 months in 2025 and the prices itself is already higher what it was expected for 2025. That's another reason the cost of the airline will be increasing. Of course, some airlines are hedging the fuel, some of them are not. They have their own, strategy when it comes to that. It's a fact that fuel prices going up will affecting airline profitability negatively. So that's why fuel prices is gonna be a really big issue in 2025, and it will determine in fact how profitable the companies will be for 2025. Yeah, those are the major factors for the economical perspective. But as we all know, aviation industry is really fragile. Not only economy is deciding if the airline will be profitable or not, but also the politics globally will be affecting airlines' profitability. Number one item in our list is the Russia and Ukraine war, and we can see that how it has impacted the global aviation industry. Since the day Russia started an invasion inside the Ukraine, we would see that the Russian airspace is closed to most carriers especially in the Western world. So all European carriers and the United States carriers, they cannot fly over Russian airspace. Similarly, Russian carriers cannot fly over Europe or United States as well. So can you imagine how much time, fuel it added on top of the airlines when they cannot use the Russian airspace? So we can see that most airlines either reduce their number of flights towards to China or eastern part of Asia because they are not profitable anymore. Carriers like Turkish Airlines, Emirates, Qatar, they can fly over Russian airspace, so naturally they gain ability to compete much better compared to their Western counterparts. That's why the politics affects the globally the airline world. That being said, guys, also we know that local conflicts between the Hamas and the Israel and also Syrian civil war finally ended in 2025 impacted the aviation. If you want to fly to Israel, most probably now insurance companies are charging you more to fly there, and also from a passenger perspective there are less people willing to fly those regions due to war or ongoing conflicts created by those countries or organizations. That's also impacting the airline industry. For instance, many airlines in the United States stop operating to Israel, and you cannot imagine how many $millions they lost, but still they need to pay to their crew, they need to keep the slots, they need to have the schedule, then you need to change it. They are talking about millions of dollars here. And then likewise, hypothetically speaking, and that's what I'm hoping, if the war can be stopped between Russia and Ukraine and the other airlines can start using the Russian airspace and the Russian airlines can use the other country's airspace, you cannot imagine how much money the airlines can save from a point of airlines view. It will be very beneficial for them. I would like to add something to local conflicts here as well. As you might see that there will be a tension between United States and Canada, and then Trump claimed that the Canada should be United States 51st state, and that is really pissed off some Canadians. That's why the traffic between United States and Canada significantly dropped below the average. I gave this example to show you how local conflicts can affect airline operation from one side to another extreme side. That's why when I was flying Canada, we were always full, like literally each seat in the airplane was full. Nowadays, when you fly to Canada, you will see plenty of seats available. That impacts the airlines negatively as well, when it's also another challenge for the airlines, especially in the United States for 2025. You can make this as local escalation tensions all around the world, and you can see how it is impacting the airline industry as a whole between two countries, especially if they're neighbor to each other, where they have lots of trades going on in between them, and then immediately it stops. So it's really bad from an airline perspective. That being said, now I would like to talk a little bit about the tariffs that is also affecting negatively to the airlines, because now tariff that US and the China, they're implementing each other, and that is really affecting or will be affecting the aviation industry, because if those things are in place, not temporary but constant, we might expect that there will be less transportation of the goods that's caused by the tariffs. Because if a country imposes a tariff to another country, it will be almost impossible for exporting or importing the stuff. From a United States perspective, if you put a tariff on a stuff which you make this good to come to your country impossible because it is not compatible with the local market or it's not economically viable to bring this product from abroad. And likewise, if you don't produce this product in your home country, in that case China, then you need to close the manufacturing sites. That's why there will be less good transportation, and indirectly speaking, there will be less passenger traffic between those countries as well because of the escalated tension between those countries. So guys, as you can see, I'll give you a couple of examples here that is expected in 2025 negatively when it comes to politics. I don't know, as of now, we have lots of troubles happening in 2025 politically, and I hope they're going to be ended soon. But if that goes in a very escalated way in 2025, we might face lots of challenges in aviation. Another challenging factors in 2025 from an aviation perspective is supply chain disruptions. This is the case since COVID, guys, and we know that the airlines are struggling to produce the airplanes, and jet manufacturers are also struggling to produce their jet engines for the aircrafts. Think of that. Is all connected to each other like a domino effect. If one industry within aviation falls, then the rest of the industry is affected from this impact. If you cannot produce the jet, you cannot produce an aircraft. If you cannot produce the aircraft, you cannot deliver it to the airlines. If there is not many airplanes coming, you stop growing or you use your older airplanes longer. That will create more maintenance costs. They will negatively impact the economics of the airline. Especially trade wars are taking place right now. We are also suspicious that in 2025, supply chain issues will be really a big factor in the aviation industry when it comes to, profitability. That's why we need to think about the supply chain issues and how we can resolve the issues. I know we have global chip crisis. We know that the airlines cannot produce the good material compared to past with the transition of the composite material since the Dreamliners, 787, we have seen lots of quality issues, and then it is the same for 350 as well. The new technological advancement combined with the supply chain issues is really hurting the airlines industry. Airspace industry is heavily relying on many different sectors. So many different producers all around the world come together to produce a jetliner. That's why, guys, nowadays it's very hard to find the raw material, and supply chain issues are affecting those stuff as well. And in fact, one of the main reasons why Boeing acquired the Spirit Aerospace system is also to manage their supply chain problems in a better way and fasten up their procedures and the developing time of the jets. And also that also created another problem, as you may all see. Now Spirit Aerospace is acquired by Boeing, but in fact Spirit also creating lots of tools for Airbuses as well. Now Airbus and Boeing needs to come together to solve how they're gonna react with the Spirit Aerospace system, and it takes time to resolve the issues that they have. I gave this example to see how airlines are taking serious their supply chains problem, because they all know that that's the major contributing factor when it comes to challenging in 2025. That's why we have lots of backlog of the airplanes, because most airlines in the world, they demand new airplanes, new generation airplanes, fuel efficient airplanes, but they cannot get them as they plan. And when we check the worldwide, we see that Airbus and Boeing are struggling, especially Airbus side is struggling with the engines that they have in the Neo series. And we see that all Boeing products that have seen also has either supply chain issues or quality issues. That is just like kind of mess right now worldwide. Also, supply chain affects the airline when it comes to capacity as well, right? They cannot purchase more airplanes. That's affecting the capitalization of the revenue that could be created potentially from the growing the markets. And also they cannot replace their old fleets with the new ones. Before supply chain issues, airlines, they were using an aircraft average 13.6 years. This number went up from 13.6 years to 14.8 years just because of the supply chain issues that they have, and they cannot find a brand new airplane. That creates more maintenance demand, which affect their cost. That also allows the older airplane used longer with the less customer satisfaction, because nowadays we are in the era of technology. We are talking about putting high-speed internet to the airplanes, and we are talking about millions of dollars investment in the first class, business class, and economy seats. So you don't want to pay thousands of dollars, go to an airplane which is 15 years old, furbished business class. But there is nothing much an airline can do to compete this stuff, because now they're kind of stuck. They don't want to invest too much on the old airplane that they will replace in a few years, but at the same time, they don't want to lose their loyal customers. In 2024, only 1,254 airplanes have been delivered to the companies, which is 30% below the projections. So aircraft manufacturers promised to airlines to produce more airplanes that they could actually produce. That's why airlines created their schedule and network based on how many airplanes that they will receive from the manufacturers. But as they continue to the year, they had to reduce the capacity. In 2025, the airlines are a little bit lucky. Now globally, travel demand right now going a little bit down, especially in the United States with the mass furloughs that has been done in the government sector, and also local conflict between Canada and United States forced the airline to retire their fleet early. But the most importantly, they don't need to, put too much seed on the industry. So they're taking advantage of the already backlogged the airplane, so that it's not a big deal for them, because if they have received those airplanes, now they would have big capacity issue, but now they are leveraging this problem with retiring their old airplanes without introducing new airplanes with the reducing demand. That's also good from the airline side, but in a longer perspective, we are not talking about 3-6 months, but we are talking about 5 years from now on, the airline industry, of course, will be negatively impacted from these capacity issues. Globally in 2025, we are also seeing legislation and regulation perspective differences between Europe and United States. As we all know that there are two authorities in the world when it comes to aviation. One is FAA, American side, one is EASA, European Union side. And we know that Europeans are really motivated when it comes to net zero emission by 2050. But with the recent changes, American counterparts, I feel like they have easing off some regulations, and I don't feel like with the current administration, US will be targeting net emission, zero emission in 2025. That's also a big issue, because when a US manufactured airplane, how they're gonna fly to Europe without zero emission. And to be honest, from my side, it is extremely remote and difficult to create zero emission by 2050. That's why FAA and EASA rules when it comes to design an airplane can significantly differ from each other in coming years if the current administration of the United States keep the political perspective on the sustainability compared to United States. I'm not discussing about which is right, which is wrong. I'm not here to tell this, but I'm just trying to say that their policies are slightly diverging from each other, and that can create a problem in the future, and we can face the consequences not in 2025 but maybe in 2040, 2045. The problem here, then, since they start diverging from each other, such as United States just withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, and that can have negative impact when it comes to designing law and procedures. After 5 years, if you want to come back, you will lose 5 years, but to compensate these 5 years, you need more years to come back. That's why now the authorities are not aligned with the future prospects of the aviation industry, and that can create the conflict when it comes to designing the airplane, or what will be the next technology when it comes to jet fuel. And also we need to discuss about the sustainability here, right? Sustainable fuel is also very expensive. There are little demonstration of sustainable fuel, SAF. It is nowhere close to be dominant when it comes to jet fuel. So that's why we have little demonstration of sustainability in the aviation industry. But the longer perspective, I think in 2025, airline needs to do a lot compared to 2024 when it comes to sustainability efforts. That also comes with the policies implemented by the governments worldwide. Last thing I would like to mention is the cybersecurity threats. This is, for me, the number one threat in the aviation industry for 2025. That's why I kept it for the last, because we know what happened in 2024, CrowdStrike, right? CrowdStrike affected the industry significantly, and most airlines had to shut down completely, and it took for many airlines to rebuild their schedule from 0 to 100%, days and days. We saw that how a software can affect entire airline industry. Now we are heavily relying on the software, right? This technological advancement brought the airline industry to a somewhere totally different. Now, without internet, we cannot operate any trips. Everything that you can imagine in aviation industry is the combination of multiple computers attached to each other, operate safely and secure. When FAA computers are down, you shouldn't fly over the United States. When an airline's computer is down, then you cannot operate any flight in the airline because you cannot download the flight plan, you cannot get the load sheet, you cannot know how much fuel you ordered or you received, and then you don't know how many people boarded, and you cannot pass this information to the related department of the airline. You can do everything manually, but today's world where an airline operates more than 1,000 flights a day, you don't have enough workforce to do everything manually. And nowadays computers, when it comes to airline scheduling, are advanced algorithms that they are running on a very complex hardwares. That's why it is really important to protect the security of the airline and the aviation industry by securing the airlines digitally. So that's why cyber attacks can impact aviation industry a lot when in a negative way. That's why, guys, when you know, it's a fact. When a terrorist organization wants their name to be heard by anyone else in the world, the first thing that they're targeting is the airliners. Airline industry has suffered too much in the past. That's why there shouldn't be even small gap in the security so that no one can breach. That's also very contributing and challenging factors for 2025 in airlines because they're growing so big, they're using so much tools, and the tools can expose lots of threats to outside of the world, so they need to make it sure that they're operating in a very safe environment. That's why, guys, cybersecurity is another challenge for 2025 for the airlines. And that was it, guys. What do you think about that? Do you have any other challenging factors that I haven't listed in my video? Please go ahead and send your comments down below. I'll read each of them. And as usual, before going, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe my channel, and hit the bell button to get the notifications. See you in the another video. Bye bye.